Members, now we go to Senator Hughes, who I think has the record this session of more time per bill on the floor than any other senator by far. Thank you, Senator. As a matter of postponed business, the chair now lays out House Bill 2911. Secretary will read the caption.
House Bill 2911 relating to voter registration.
Chair recognizes Senator Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. President. And remember, I'll try to pull down the average on this one. I thank everyone for their indulgence. Floor Amendment 1, we laid out...
you can tell them.
Oh, that's right, yeah. They're the ones who need to
hear. They're the ones that are important.
Floor Amendment 1 had some technical concerns, and so I'm moving to withdraw Floor Amendment number 1.
Any objection? Hearing none. The amendment is withdrawn. Following amendment. Secretary will read the amendment.
Floor Amendment number 2 by Hughes.
Senator Hughes, you're recognized on Floor Amendment number 2.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, if it's helpful, I'll share with you the differences between 1 and 2. They're easy to point out, and then, of course, I'll yield for questions at the pleasure of the Senate. So on page 2 of Floor Amendment number 1 from yesterday, there was language on line 13 that's regarding eligibility to vote and actually casting a vote. That language has been removed from this amendment. There was a concern that might be beyond the scope. There might be a germaneness problem since this bill is about registration and that language was about actually voting. So in the amendment before you, that language has been struck from yesterday's amendment. And then there's also language on page 5, line 11. There's a reference to or other law. And so just out of an abundance of caution to make sure we're not going beyond the scope of the bill, or other law has been struck. And finally, on page 7 at the top, one more reference to or other law. So Floor Amendment number 2 before you is a tightened, focused, narrower version of Floor Amendment 1. And I move adoption of Floor Amendment number 2.
Senator Menendez, for what purpose?
Thank you, Mr. President. A couple questions on the amendment.
Do you yield, Senator?
Yes, sir, I'll yield, of course.
Senator Hughes, I want to thank you for working with me on this. You're absolutely correct. And yesterday when the amendment hit the floor, I was concerned that it had, I think, 2 whole bills and parts of a third bill, a little part of SB 9, and then it had parts of, is it 203 or 205?
Yes, 205, that's right.
205 and 903, I think it was.
That's exactly right. Okay. Those are the 3.
And all 3 of those bills left the floor on a 19-12 partisan vote, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe that's right.
And so what you've done in this amendment, there was a portion that was not germane to the actual bill, and that's the portion that's been struck from this amendment. Is that correct?
Senator, that's right. There was no formal ruling, but working with the parliamentarian and with other senators, just to remove any concern about germaneness, those 3 pieces were removed so that it's nice and clean, focused only on the registration process, which is what the underlying bill is about.
One of the concerns that I still have with this is where we talk about the Secretary of State entering into an agreement with the Department of Public Safety on the information, is that the Secretary of State's office and the Department of Public Safety, they don't have the capacity to know when someone who was here in the country legally, let's say on a green card, a visa, and they have a driver's license, but then let's say now they've become a naturalized U.S. citizen. There's that gap. And my concern is that once again, we've just a few months ago went through a process where we saw thousands and thousands of people who were alleged to be on the rolls illegally, and only to know or for it to come out that they were actually naturalized U.S. citizens. How do we cure that information, or how does that get resolved? My concern is that we're just going to put a target on naturalized U.S. citizens and keep them from being eligible to vote, and that's a concern that I have.
Senator, it's a great question. I'm happy to answer it. As you know, there are those situations where someone is here legally but not a citizen. Maybe I'm here on a student visa or a work visa, right? And so I get a driver license. But with that driver license, I notify the DPS that I'm not a citizen. So I can drive, but there's a note that I'm not a citizen. And so then, if that same person then registers to vote and says they are a citizen, that's where the concern has come from. And as you know, the Secretary of State of several months went through a process, and they were going back through years of data, right? And so understandably, could be some folks in there who years ago, when they were not citizens, got a driver license, and then became citizens. Of course, they're citizens. They're entitled to vote. They're American citizens. That wonderful that we enjoy, that wonderful privilege that we all enjoy. So here's how this amendment helps. And I want to make sure we're clear. On page 5, on line 9, it says quarterly review. You'll find quarterly review a number of times in this bill, because I think part of the concern with the project last year was that they were going back so many years, and it was hard to tell, and the information was old. It was perhaps some of it, again, it went back a number of years. Under this amendment, the Secretary of State, the DPS, and also the Social Security Administration will coordinate, and on at least a quarterly basis, we'll be checking. So that way we'll catch the very thing you're talking about. Does that make sense? By doing it on a quarterly basis, or even more frequently, we don't get so far behind and let the information get so out of date. So that's really what this is about. I think it addresses part of your concern.
The question of the concern is, you're asking the Attorney General now to check to see if the database is accurate on a quarterly basis. One of the concerns that I have that falls in line with that is, what if someone moves and the address on their driver's license, let's say they didn't update it in time before the election came up, they were within the 30 days, and I had understood here that if the addresses didn't match up, that they wouldn't be allowed to vote, or they wouldn't be automatically. How would they know? Because currently, if you go vote and they say, well, I had an address change, they send they send a new voter registration, they update it.
That's right.
And my understanding that in this amendment, it no longer does that. And the person that was moving would not know whether or not that had happened. And so I'm concerned that a lot of this legislation is intended to keep people from being able to vote for technicalities.
Well, Senator, this bill deals with comparing information that's been given to the Social Security Administration and given to the DPS, and information given to the Secretary of State. And so that's the idea. You'll see some language in there about strong match and weak match. And I think that might be helpful here, because under the Secretary of State's rules, and this is generally accepted in this area, a strong match occurs when two records have the same last name, same date of birth, and all 9 numbers in the Social Security number match. So in a case like that, they're certain that it's the same person. And then the process moves forward. For a weaker match, if all that doesn't line up, then they contact the person, they inquire to find out. So as far as someone moving or the card's mailed to the wrong place, this doesn't affect that. This only affects folks who have told the DPS or the Social Security Administration that they're not citizens, and then on their voter registration card have represented that they are. If I understand your question.
I'll clarify my question. On page 4, line 11, you have comparison of information regarding ineligibility. And it talks about where the Secretary of State shall quarterly compare the information received. So if I go down on section A1, the Secretary of State shall enter an agreement with the Department of Public Safety under which information in the statewide computer voter registration system is compared against information in the database of DPS on a monthly basis to verify the accuracy of the information provided by voter registration applicants. The information compared must include, at a minimum, a voter's full legal name, makes sense, former name, if applicable, makes sense, date of birth. Now, here's where I get concerned. Residence address. That may or may not change. Driver's license is fine. The number, Social Security. Then you have signature. So my question is, if all of these things, here's the other question, do all of these things have to match? Because it says if the Secretary determines from the information received in that section I just read about, then the voter on the registration list may be ineligible to vote. That's new language. So my question is, does everything have to match perfectly on that list, or do you knock someone off because their signature doesn't look like the signature? That's a little different.
Senator, I think this may be helpful. I'm glad you asked, and I probably didn't state this clearly. So that long list of information that must be compared, that is to make sure people are not being taken off the list inappropriately, right? And so, and so that means if we have a person who in one record shows up to have said they're not a citizen, and then in another record said that they were, they've got to compare all of those bases. So I would suggest the more elements we're comparing here, the less likely we are to make a mistake about it being the same person. So no one's going to get knocked off because they have the wrong address. You see, the more elements we put, we're raising the standard to make sure they have all the information when they're comparing the voter, the person that said they weren't a citizen with the person that said they are. If that's helpful, I think it's over-inclusive. It's the inverse of what we were talking about. Yes, sir.
I'm just concerned that it would create an unfair or otherwise eligible voter who may have received the form and filled it out in good faith. So you took out the part of the form, did you not?
Under that, as far as the pre-checked form, that should still be in this amendment. Let me. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. That's on page 1. Sorry, I was looking at the note. That's on page 1, lines 11 through 15. That's still there.
Which is fine. I would just want to make sure that our voters can still otherwise register under a ballot that has not been pre-populated, correct?
Of course. So it's not uncommon to help folks and pre-populate with name and address, that sort of thing. But it's important that if I'm verifying that I'm of age and I'm a citizen eligible to vote, that the voter, the person applying to vote, should be the one. You may recall thousands of cards were sent out and it had that form pre-checked, I am a U.S. citizen. A number of people called the Secretary of State who were not citizens. They were the folks we described, and maybe I'm here on a green card as a student visa as worker, and they called and they said, hey, I'm not a citizen, but I got this card. Does this mean I can vote? And so I'm not suggesting that they were intentionally sent to folks who weren't citizens, but it's clearly a problem, right? If someone gets a card in the mail and says, sign this, and it says I'm a citizen, and they're not a citizen.
Sure, no, I appreciate that. Question, how will voters know that their form's been rejected? The amendment doesn't... Do you have anything in your amendment or your bill that tells a voter must receive a form that's been rejected?
Yes, sir. There's a procedure for that, and that's there's a procedure for that already in statute. And so under this amendment, it depends on how close to the election it is. But the person has got to be notified. If they've already been put into the registration, then they would go in suspense, and there's a process. But if it's caught ahead of time, the person's notified. Now, if it's close to the election, then it goes on through, and it's dealt with after that. We want to make sure this is not a gotcha situation.
Okay. Very good. The language that you have in your amendment, does it provide new investigative powers to our county and district attorneys as well as the Office of the Attorney General? Specifically, the language in the last two sections on your amendment, page 6, lines 11 through 21, and you may have struck this part of your bill out. I'm not sure. Let me check here.
Senator, under present law, the information can be, the investigation can be done by the county attorney, district attorney, or the attorney general. So that's nothing new. The difference is that right now, the clerk is required to give a list of persons who are excused or disqualified because of citizenship. This is on the process we described. But now they're required to send it to the voter registrar, Secretary of State, and the county or district attorney. We're adding the attorney general to that list of the ones that get notification. Their authority already exists to investigate these matters, but we're making sure they're made aware along with a local prosecutor.
In this
That's the language on page 6, the language you're talking about.
In this legislation, it's not your intent to mandate that the Attorney General or our district and county attorneys initiate investigations into people? I don't believe it is.
No, sir.
On these lists obtained, right? It's not the intention?
That is not the intent. We want to make sure that the authority is there if it's needed, but it doesn't compel anything like that.
Okay. Do you know how long the whole application challenge process currently takes without this amendment that's being offered?
Well, Senator, we're not affecting the process itself. That's already in statute. The only thing this does is if the application comes, if the challenge comes, and it's not right before the election, they can notify the voters sooner and give them a chance to cure it.
So my understanding, the registrar has 2 days to make the challenge determination, then another 2 days to send the challenge notice, and then assume 2 to 3 days for mail. Then even if a voter replies immediately, it's another 2 to 3 days to send it back. So the registrar has 10 days to hold a hearing on the challenge. So under best case scenario, it's about 18 days So would you happen to have any other tools a registrar can use to investigate and challenge a voter's registration if they happen to believe the voter may not be eligible?
Well, Senator, that's part of why the language is there at the bottom of page 1, where you see the new language underlined says, beginning on line 29, if the application was submitted less than 60 days before the election in which the applicant would be eligible to vote, or 30th day, the point of that is, if we're real close to an election, we don't want anybody to be left in the lurch.
Right.
But if there's time, and there's time before the election, then that's kind of what this is sort of addressing your concern.
Yeah,
I think.
I just want to make sure, you and I don't think, you don't think that we're leaving too much discretion to individual registrars, do you?
No, sir. No,
Okay.
sir.
My final question here is, the purpose behind these amendments, Senator, have we received proven data of illegal voter registration increasing? If so, have that data that you can share with us? And if not, what's the basis for what seems to be a little bit of a crackdown?
Well, thank you, Senator. The Senate Select Committee on Election Integrity met over the interim and heard testimony from a prosecutor, from law enforcement, from elections administrators, from volunteers, from political parties. The Senate State Affairs Committee heard similar testimony, and so the provisions in Senate Bill 903 arose from that. And so that's what the idea is. And again, you described this process that was just gone through. When we allow the information to go for a long time, when we're not comparing the driver license database and the voter database, it allows us to get out of whack. So this is to keep us checking at least quarterly basis, even a monthly basis in some cases. This is about keeping it squared up as we go along, so folks don't get surprised, but don't have a bigger problem to clean up.
I understand completely the intention. I just want to make sure that we don't do anything. Yesterday you had a bill to help give voters more options on the ballot.
Yes, sir.
What I don't want to do is to have fewer people have the ability to vote who may get caught in a transition period from their naturalization, from being here legally as an immigrant to being a naturalized U.S. citizen. And I think that's a concern to me, that we do everything we can to make sure that people who have the right to vote, that have that ability to exercise that right.
Senator, amen. I know you and I agree, and I know we all agree on this concept, that U.S. citizenship, you and I were blessed to be born with it, other folks acquire it, and it's even more precious to them, isn't it, when they do that. And so that U.S. citizenship is a special privilege so few people ever get to enjoy. Along with it comes the right to vote, but only for U.S. citizens. And I know we agree on that.
Would it surprise you to know that both of my parents, who are naturalized U.S. citizens, probably have never missed an election, and that when I turned 18, they dragged me to the polls to make sure that I voted, and my sister. And so I do believe with you that the right to vote is a precious right that we must protect for everyone who has earned it. Thank you for your patience with these questions.
Thank you, Senator, and I agree with you. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Senator. Thank you, President. Mr.
Thank
members.
you, Senator. Senator Watson, for what purpose?
I'd like to ask a couple of questions.
Do you yield?
Of course, I'll yield.
Thank you, Senator. There are several components of this floor amendment that you'll agree with me have been the subject of some controversy and even a lawsuit while we've been in session, correct? The working with DPS to get matches on different voters, is that right?
Senator, that's right, and I think the provisions here will prevent some of those challenges going forward, but you're correct.
But there was a lawsuit filed related to some of the issues in this floor amendment, correct?
Some of the issues that are addressed are these specific procedures weren't at issue, but yes, sir, in this area of the law.
And that leads to my question. As a result of that lawsuit, there was a settlement agreement entered into. You're aware of that?
I've heard that, yes, sir.
All right, so you have not read the settlement agreement?
No, sir.
Have you made any comparison of the settlement agreement to your floor amendment to make any determination as to whether it complies with the settlement agreement?
Senator, I have not. Now, my understanding is that...
Your understanding?
Oh, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt. I'll let you finish. I'll let you finish.
Please go ahead.
That's okay.
I'm concerned what your understanding is, as opposed to... Because you're asking us now to vote on a floor amendment, and where we know that there's been a settlement agreement entered into. Let me ask you this question. Do you agree with me that regardless of what is in your floor amendment, the state of Texas would be bound by the settlement agreement that the state has entered into, with the Attorney General being the lawyer for the state of Texas and the Secretary of State being one of the defendants?
Senator, I haven't seen the document. I am told it is not a consent decree, but that's the extent of my detailed knowledge.
But as an attorney, you understand that an agreement, it may not be a consent decree, but it is a binding settlement agreement that the state has to honor.
Well, Senator, it would not be binding upon the legislature. We were not a party to it, at least you correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe we were.
But you don't know whether you're asking the legislature to vote on something that would violate an agreement that the state of Texas has entered into with regard to voting rights, even during this session.
Senator, I've read enough about it, and again, that whatever was agreed to was regarding events that took place before the session. This is about going forward, a way to prevent those kind of problems from happening in the future.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Rodriguez, for what purpose?
To ask just one question, Mr.
Just one.
Just one.
Of course, I'll yield.
I'm going to put this to the test. Let's see. All right. We'll see.
Depends on his answer. There might be some follow-up.
There you go. Could be one with many parts. Go ahead, Senator.
So, Senator Hughes, if there's one thing that we learned from the voter purge pursued by the Secretary of State, State Whitley, is that database matching is suspect at best. I think that was clearly articulated in the court proceedings. What provisions in the bill address errors in database management?
Well, thank you, Senator. As I understand, one of the great concerns, if not the greatest, was that data that went back years ago was being compared, and that made it difficult. And that's why we're so proud of this amendment, because this requires that on a quarterly basis or even a monthly basis, the information be compared so that we don't get behind, right? And so then if someone becomes naturalized and gains their citizenship, we know about it, it can be dealt with. We don't go years without getting the databases squared up. So honestly, I really believe this amendment deals with a lot of the concerns that were raised about that procedure.
Well, you're saying the quarterly review by the Attorney General will help in this, but as I recall from the court proceedings and also from what was being written in the press, some of the data itself was flawed.
Well, Senator, again, I mentioned that quarterly review by the AG. This also requires systematic quarterly or monthly comparing between the DPS database and the Social Security, the Secretary of State, and also the U.S. Social Security Administration. Of course, they maintain those records as well. So again, this is, respectfully, I believe this is where we should have been, where we're comparing the data on an ongoing basis, so those problems show up and they can be addressed right then and not get so old.
All right. Well, thank you.
No,
thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, I've asked a follow-up.
Yeah, no, that was very timely. You're right on target.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Hinojosa, for what purpose?
Well, Senator Hughes.
Do you yield?
Of course, I'll yield.
Thank you, Senator Hughes. And I'm not going to belabor some of the points that have already been made, but we went through a big debate and a lot of lawsuits dealing with voter ID a couple of sessions back. And if you look at page 4, you list the information that a voter must include, a minimum of information. Full legal name, former name if applicable, date of birth, residence address, and then on number 8, you have documentation of lawful presence in this state. What is required to show that? Your driver's license?
Thank you, Senator. So this section deals with that language from the Department of Public Safety database. And as you know, to get a driver license, you're required to show that, right? So to get your driver license, you have to show all those things, including lawful presence. Because as we discussed, I might be here with a green card on a student visa or a work visa, and I can get a driver license, but I've got to show them I'm here legally. So DPS already has that information, and we're making sure that they look at everything when they do the comparison. So the voter doesn't have to show this. This is what the DPS and Secretary of State compare when they're looking at the data.
So the driver's license itself already has the information that you're requesting twice.
I beg your pardon?
The driver's license already has the information that you're requesting.
No, seriously, no, you're right. So the driver license process already requires that data, and so this is not asking the voter to show it. This is saying DPS, since you have the data, you compare that with what the Secretary of State has.
And my other question deals with, I guess, we found out through experience when we did the voter ID legislation that a woman who gets married and changes her last name had many issues many times trying to register to vote and get a driver's license.
Right.
How does your legislation address that particular problem when the name may not match?
So, Senator, in this case, the only thing we want to do is make sure that folks who have told the Department of Public Safety for their driver license, or have told the Social Security Administration that they're not U.S. citizens, and they're saying on their voter registration application that they are. So the only time this comes up is if there's a match between the same person in those different databases. So all this information already exists. We're not requiring the voter to give us any more information. This is about what the state does when they're reviewing the application. So I want to be clear, this isn't requiring the voter to give more information. So don't worry about that.
Well, I understand that, but I guess if a woman gets married and she goes to register to vote and changes her name, wouldn't her application be kicked out?
No, sir, it would not under this. When she registers to vote and fills out the form and says, I'm a U.S. citizen and I'm 18 years of old or age and her address shows she lives in Texas, then there's nothing here that would stop that. Now, that I read, nothing in this bill would stop that.
Well, I'm not sure, because many times, even when they file a joint income tax, the federal government rejects the income tax application because the woman changed her name to a married name,
Right.
and they want to go by her maiden name. And here, it's the same thing with Social Security. You're going to be checking the information in the database, Social Security,
Right.
And the lady's got married, is going to kick out that application.
I see what you're saying, and so that I want to make sure I'm stating this correctly. When the person submits their voter registration application, the Secretary of State has that, and then they compare it to these other databases. If it doesn't match the other databases, then the applicant is fine. If there is a match, right? So if I fill out my voter registration application, and then I show up in another database where the same person said I'm not a citizen, that's the problem. So the situation you're describing, that wouldn't be affected at all. If there's no match, they're fine. A match means they're going to take a closer look and see if this person's really eligible to vote. So if there's no match, there's no problem.
So the match is only as it relates to being a U.S. citizen?
That's the idea. Well, U.S. citizenship and age, qualifications to vote. That's right.
Okay. Thank you, Senator.
Well, thank you for asking the question, Senator. I know this has gotten confusing, and I thank you for asking the question.
Senator Hughes makes a motion to adopt the amendment. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Buckingham, Campbell, Creighton, Fallon, Flores, Hall, Hancock, Hinojosa, Huffman, Hughes, Johnson, Colcourse, Lucio, Menendez, Miles, Nelson, Nichols, Paxton, Perry, Powell, Rodriguez, Wertner, Sulliger, Taylor, Watson, West, Whitmire, and Zaffarini.
19 ayes, 12 nays. The amendment is adopted. The following amendment members. Secretary will read the amendment.
Floor Amendment Number 3 by Betancourt.
Senator Betancourt, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. For Amendment Number 3 is simply the addition of the prohibition of not allowing a commercial post office box or similar location to be used as a residence location for voter registration. This is a bill that already passed the Senate 1190, 21 to 10. It's literally a one-line addition to the bill, and I believe that we've had a significant discussion about this because this comes from Harris County, Senator Hughes, where 86 people were registered at one UPS store alone at 1302 Wall Drive. And there's over 100 such locations and thousands of voters, and this amendment addresses that. So I move adoption of floor amendment number 3.
Senator Hughes?
It's acceptable to the author. Good amendment.
Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Buckingham, Campbell, Creighton, Fallon, Flores, Hall, Hancock, Hinojosa, Huffman, Hughes, Johnson, Colcourse, Lucio Menendez, Miles, Nelson, Nichols, Paxton, Perry, Powell, Rodriguez, Schwartner, Sulliger, Taylor, Watson, West, Whitmire, and Zaffarini.
19 aye votes and 12 nay votes. The amendment is adopted. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President.
No other amendments. You recognize passage of third reading.
I move passage of third reading.
Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Buckingham, Campbell, Creighton, Fallon, Flores, Hall, Hancock, Hinojosa, Huffman, Hughes, Johnson, Colcourse, Lucio Menendez, Miles, Nelson, Nichols, Paxton, Perry, Powell, Rodriguez, Schwartner, Sulliger, Taylor, Watson, West, Whitmire, and Zaffarini.
19 ayes, 12 nays. The bill passed the third reading. You'll have to hold there, maybe until tomorrow.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, members.
We'll welcome our guest to the Capitol today in your Senate chamber. Great to have you with us.